Colm Toibin is one of Ireland's greatest living writers. He currently lives in New York, where he teaches creative writing at Princeton. Not for long, though. He's heading home soon. He's won numerous awards, the latest being the Costa Novel Award for his latest bestseller, Brooklyn. And I'm happy to say he joins us in the breakfast studio this morning. Colm, welcome to breakfast.
Good morning.
Now, there's been a lot of debate over how you say your surname. We've had people ringing up correcting me. You say it for me.
Well, the first name is Colm. Irish people say film. English people are always laughing at us, saying, have you seen any good films recently? LM gets a full syllable, so it's Colm. And the second name is Toibin, as in has been, as in old bean, as in your toe, and then a bean.
Okay, well, old Bean, let's get on with it. You're here for the Sydney Writers' Festival. Writers' Festivals, I imagine, can be pretty intense experiences for authors because there you are, everyone's coming to hear you, all your fans are there. Do you enjoy that experience?
Yeah, I think that the business now of that, I suppose in the 19th century, someone like Henry James, for example, never appeared in public. He appeared in public only once on the stage at the end of one of his plays, where the audience had hated it so much that they booed him off the stage, and he was totally depressed about it. That was the only time he actually ever appeared in public.
So it's actually perhaps possible that he never met a reader face-to-face, or certainly not one that owned up to it.
Yeah, and he didn't actually have many readers as a result of that. Charles Dickens was the great one in the 19th century, who simply his tours of America, where he would do readings from his work, became famous. And that's one of the ways in which Dickens became such a popular reading, such a popular author was that his personal appearances. But other authors like George Eliot, but even in our time, figures like Graham Greene, Evelyn Waugh, seemed oddly remote and strange, wearing four-piece suits, sort of living in sort of funny country houses. But authors don't do that anymore. That's died out.
You look relatively normal. Is that affected by the fact that you're appearing in public? Has it changed you and you as a writer?
Yeah, I think the moments where you actually feel, hey, this sentence or this paragraph has some power when it's read out loud and it's affecting the audience, that you can actually see something happening, just means that when you're working on your own at home, you feel this is not nothing. This is actually something that maybe matters, because there's so much noise going on in the world that you feel a book is a thing of very little importance increasingly. But with the way the festivals are going, especially in Canada, in Australia, but also at the moment in Britain, every place has a festival, and those festivals are now being attended by serious, serious readers.
And it's a significant thing for a writer and book sales?
Yeah.
This novel, Brooklyn, your latest novel, story set in the 50s in Ireland, a young woman leaving her small hometown in Ireland where nothing much is going on, so nothing much seems to happen in her hometown anyway. She heads to the US, to Brooklyn. A major theme of the book is the experience of emigration. Why did you choose that theme, and why did you choose this story?
I think it's a secret history of Ireland over the last 150 years. That while the obvious history is the history of the struggle for independence, getting over the famine, all those big political issues that people dealt with. But the secret history is that almost every single family in every single generation lost someone to emigration. And when I say lost, that person then could have a very rich life. In other words, that person could go to Australia or go to Canada or go to the United States and slowly build a new life. What I was interested in was the first few years of that, as to what that looked like, the person who's in between two countries, and how that will affect things like love, like if you fall in love in a foreign country, what's that like for you when you don't have any context for the person? If I fall in love with someone in Enniscorthy, where I'm from, there are only 6,000 of us. I'll know his brothers and sisters. I'll know everything about him. So too with this book, that when she falls in love in Enniscorthy, she knows him. Nothing about him puzzles her. But when she falls in love with Brooklyn, he's Italian. She can't work him out.
And before you get to that point of her being over there and falling in love and moving on and starting to open up to the experiences of the new, you spend a fair bit of time just detailing, as you say, the sadness of the loss. And it's beautifully written, that, and it's quite overpowering as you read it, the sadness of her mother and her sister and her own sadness at leaving. And it's often something we don't dwell on. Do you think, and were you hoping to give us a window into the experience of those amongst us who have come from far away too, and what they'd be experiencing?
Yeah, that the night before you left, if you were going to the United States, was called an American Wake. And the reason was that they thought they'd never see you again. And because it was too hard to come back. First of all, it was too much time, the ship, the journey, but also just the cost. So a lot of people who went to America simply never came back. They sent letters back on aerogram note paper, and then they built their families and they built their lives in America. So also, of course, those boat journeys were horrific. And
the
going out
description
of
of the
Liverpool,
journey is just disgusting, I must say.
yeah, and I suppose what I wanted was to establish there was suddenly this innocent girl who's been brought up in this cocoon of, a loving family is suddenly thrust out into the world, out of Liverpool. And it's so humiliating, the journey and the whole business of vomiting and the whole business of toilets and the boat. And all, that is the first thing that's happened to her that she can never tell them about. She knows when she gets to the other side, there's no point in writing a long letter to her mother describing how awful the journey will be, because her mother is worried enough. So that's the first secret she'll keep from them. But I wanted to sort of establish that for her, that this is her time alone, and her time alone isn't any fun at the beginning.
And the young woman we're talking about, Eilish, is that how I say her name? Eilish. Yeah. As you say, she's pretty quiet. She's a pretty timid sort of girl. She has to remind herself to laugh because she knows that other people like it when she's laughing. Why did you choose a character like that, and how did you get to know a character like that to portray her here?
I think that it's part of the thing the novel can do in a way that the movie can't do or the stage play can't do is go inward. And so that you can go into the mind and the imagination of the most powerless person, of someone who ostensibly seems timid, who seems not ready to assert themselves, and yet in their mind all the time, various things, they're noticing things, remembering things, feeling things, and that you can go in there, and if you go in there enough, with enough detail, with enough rich detail, the reader will start to feel, oh, I know her, or I feel I know her. And then you can work from that. I think we've had enough heroes. We open the, sports heroes, people in the economy, all those. We know about heroes. But I'm more interested in the figure in the photograph, who's the blurred figure in the photograph that I want to bring into focus, rather than the figure at the center of the photograph.
And it takes you a long time to do that, doesn't it? It takes you a long time to craft a book. Is that painful, that process?
Yeah, you have to feel it before you could write it. You can't just say, I'm going to write a novel. You have to feel the thing and know it. And so when you're coming to that scene, for example, where she's having such a terrible time on the boat, you can't just write that. Almost like someone distant from you. You almost have to become her and begin to see the world through her eyes. And all you're really doing is adding the next detail, the next detail, the next detail, the next detail. And each of them has to be truthful, but also they have to have their own rhythm. They can't be fully boring. I mean, if you had the full rhythm of someone's actual mind working, it'd be the most boring thing imaginable. Even when Virginia Woolf tried it, or James Joyce, they didn't fully do it. They speeded things up. But with this, you have to feel it before you can write it.
Colm, you're a writer, of course. You're a journalist. You're a publisher these days, and you're heading home to Ireland. There is a degree of turmoil, I would imagine, in Ireland in response to what's going on with the Catholic Church at the moment. The Pope, of course, famously wrote a letter apologising to the Irish for the sexual abuse within the church. What impact is this having in your homeland?
I think we live in the age of apology, that all you have to do is something atrocious, and then you apologize for it. In other words, you look at the whole Tiger Wood episode. People have learned to apologize, and so the church has been learning the language of apology. And the problem we have with the church is that they don't mean it, that they still feel they have all this power and authority. And every so often they let the side down, where you realize the old arrogance is still there. They still think somehow or other that they are above the civil power. They still think the game isn't up. Look, if anyone was involved in the cover-up of what happened, or the creating of silence and shame for the victims, they have to go. Now, where they can go is very simple. They can go and pray somewhere. They own loads of property all over Ireland, and they can go into the property and they can pray all they like in the property. But as regards offering leadership to the society or leadership to the faithful, we do need a new group of people who have a new attitude, and we're going to have to drag them kicking and screaming towards this new attitude.
Colm Toibin, it's a pleasure to have you on Breakfast. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Colm Toibin, his latest novel, Brooklyn, is available through Picador Australia. You're listening to RM Breakfast. It's 8:17.